we don't have backups, which is not
don't
why
remember-
we now do backups.
I don't remember what we did. I think we like found some tank tops.
I think
day.
I had just spare white like bodysuits that I had just brought on a whim, and I think we used those until I could find a better replacement.
I think we used those for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it did the trick.
Whatever.
So if you ever see us just dancing around in plain white bodysuits,
it's my fault.
that Fish has melted something. Bless her heart. We'll call it a malfunction of the dryer.
All right.
For the record.
Yeah.
That freaking dryer was broken.
You know what I think probably happened was there's the vent at the back, and I'm sure one of them got caught. And it just was pressed up against there long enough. Because that's happened in my own. I almost burned down my house once. I learned a lot about how dryers work.
Oh my gosh.
Wardrobe person.
Look out, everybody. Don't burn your house down.
I'm great at my job. All right.
Well, on that note, should we play a song first to introduce our guest?
I think so.
I think that would be fun. So I am so excited today. We have Tycho as a guest.
Yay.
And we've been listening to his music today as we were like costuming. Like, obviously I've heard his music before, but you know, we were listening to it like just in playlists as we were doing costumes, and I was like, oh, this is so dreamy.
So good.
It's amazing. And I feel like
I felt like I was in like a wonderland
of
sorts. Yeah.
I know. I wanted to just close my eyes and see the colors. So we're just gonna get into it with let's do Awake. That's a good one. So after we listen to this song, I will invite our guest Tycho to jump in and we'll start chatting. Whew.
Nice.
So dreamy.
Yeah. Big fan.
Big fan. All right. Well, no further ado, I would like to bring on our guest. He is he's so many things. He is a musician. He is a music artist. He's also a visual artist. He's Grammy nominated. He has been in the music industry for 2 decades, just killing it and staying relevant and current, which is a feat in itself. So, I'd love to invite Tycho into our interview today. All right, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where are you calling from today?
I'm in sunny Oakland, California.
Oh, nice. You're not too far from us. Well, kind of close-ish. Oh my gosh, I love your music. It is so dreamy and so like, I don't know, it just really takes you to another place when you listen to it. So yeah, we've been vibing all day to it. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I never, it's not like I'm sitting around listening to my own music. So like, that's the first time I've listened to Awake from, the normal version. You hear it when you're playing it live, but I always forget there's vocals. There's vocal, that's the only song I ever said. I mean, saying there's vocals on that is kind of an overstatement, but they're very subtly in the end, and I always forget about that part. And I just heard it, and I was like,
funny.
"Whoa, that's like it's way more prominent than I thought." Interesting.
Isn't that funny how it is? It's like you write music, you get it produced and mixed and mastered, and then it, like you said, it's not like we listen to our own music in that sense ever. Really, it's like you rehearse it, you do it live, but like. Yeah, very rarely do we just sit back and listen to our own songs. That's a really funny point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like at the very end, obviously during the mixing and mastering process, you're listening to it a lot. And there is this moment when I know that it's done and I've accepted it as being done, that it's actually this really enjoyable experience to kind of listen to, because it's like the last moment that song is just yours and yours alone, So it's like this kind of nice intimate moment, and you get to like hear it for the last time with like an outsider's ears, like hearing it as from a music appreciation standpoint, as opposed to like being like, oh, I guess we're playing this song for the 1,000th time tonight.
Right. It's almost like the in-between moment between when a song is like malleable and like you can change it up to that point. Anything's fair game when you're writing it, and you can push this in the mix. You can take this out, and then in that one moment that you're talking about, like you said, it's just yours and you just get to enjoy it before it then becomes a live thing that you have to regurgitate. Like, so it's kind of like a special little, next time I'm in the mixing process, I'm going to remember, like, this is special. Like, remember this moment.
And there's it's this huge moment of release where you like let go and you say like, you know what, this is done. Like, I'm going to stop like editing every hi-hat or whatever, whatever stupid thing I was obsessing over. And it's like, once that letting go in that moment, I don't know, that's the greatest feeling. And then you get to just like appreciate it. It's just, Yeah, that's the most like relieving feeling, because there's so much anxiety tied up in everything that comes before it when you have all these decisions to make, and you can basically do whatever you want, and it's hard to make all those calls, but once it's done, it's done.
Absolutely. Do you have a hard time wrapping projects, or are you like ready to go when it's time?
Oh no, I'm like so horrible at that's my biggest problem is like, right, I just come up with all these little ideas and like half, just sort of like sketches, but like
Mm.
finishing songs is like this huge ordeal for me. I have a really unhealthy relationship with what comes after writing, like sketch ideas. Like it's just
Mm.
a lot of obsessive behavior, and just, yeah, it's not the greatest thing. So I enjoy the process. I enjoy a lot of aspects of it, but yeah, I'm not great at letting go and like letting something be what it wants to be all the time.
Right. So you're the kind of artist, you just have tons of ideas, and then how do you then pick which one goes to the next stage of like, okay, I'm going to finish this one, or like this is making the album or not?
Yeah, that's always a tough thing to do. I guess like I think there's a few factors. Obviously, the things that really strike your ear and kind of make you feel something. But there's also some pragmatic considerations. Like this song sounds pretty much this sounds a lot closer to being done than all these other things. So let's maybe
Hmm.
focus on some realistic goals, like finishing 8 songs instead of like
Right.
here's 100 4-bar loops. Which one's good? So there's a balancing act that happens there. But typically the songs, they kind of present themselves. I like to think that they always make themselves known, and you end up picking the right ones.
I always hope so, because I've actually had the experience before where like a song that just kind of I thought was like that last song, like I need a 12th song for my album or whatever, the number is. And you kind of throw that last one on there, and then that's kind of a fan favorite. And you're like, oh my gosh, that was not like it was a filler almost. And that's a fan favorite. And so I always hope that I'm in tune enough to pick the right song, because you're like, who knows, there could be a demo sitting on my computer that could have like been the song that changed everything, or that my fans is a favorite of theirs. Anyways, I don't know if you ever
There
think of
is.
that.
No, the best song you ever made is sitting on a zip disk somewhere in your house, or a hard drive for sure.
All right, I'm gonna go dig around my house. Excuse me, I'll be back in a few years once I've gone through all my hard drives. Are you a producer first or an instrumentalist first?
Definitely a producer. I came to music really late in my life. Like 20 was when I started playing. I'd never touched or worked on music. I was just I did like pen and ink drawing and stuff. That was only like art that I was doing. So yeah, I've always approached it from the technical side. I just was always like obsessed with kind of like the engineering and that side of it, and the music. It was almost like a necessary just outgrowth of that. Like, oh, well, I got to write something so that I can edit it and produce it and mix it.
Right.
But slowly, I feel like I don't know anything about music theory. I don't know. I can't name chords or any of that kind of stuff. So I just kind of feel around on guitars and keyboards. So like, I definitely don't think of myself as an instrumentalist, but I know my way around the keyboard a little better than a guitar, I'd say.
That's so interesting, because you make instrumental music, yet you
assumed that.
Yeah, I would have assumed that you were like, a studied musician that knew all their stuff, because not very many people make instrumental music, especially that don't call themselves an instrumentalist. So that's really ironic. I'm curious though. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying, well, yeah, I think the music, if you broke it down, I'm sure like somebody who understood music theory would be like, oh, this is really simplistic music. Like, I don't think there's a ton going on musically that's like mind blowing. It's more, I think the strengths of the music are in the timbres and textures and tonalities and kind of the voicing of the music, and not necessarily the music itself. Like if you wrote it out in sheet music, I'm sure it wouldn't be that compelling,
It's the vibe, though. It's like like you said, the tones, the textures, they create such a warm atmosphere. That's its own kind of music in itself when you are you take it out of the technicality and you just, sometimes I think I overcomplicate things a little bit. And it's interesting how it can sometimes be really difficult to write a simple melody, like something that just doesn't need a ton of notes. Sometimes that's where I struggle the most. Yeah. Is how can I say something meaningful in the least amount of notes, or for writers, the least amount of words? That's the tricky part sometimes.
Now you're writing hits.
There you go. That's what Ryan Tedder says.
Yeah, that's the holy grail. I mean, like, I've been a graphic designer my whole life. That's what I used to do for a living. And I feel like it's the same. Graphic design is all about like communicating these ideas with the least amount of information. And it, obviously a lot of my work is kind of maximalist visual work, but I definitely really appreciate minimalist, like the Swiss style in graphic design and minimalism. And I think there's big parallels there between melody and graphic elements, like trying to say, trying to affect people and make them, evoke something from people, an emotional reaction with the least amount of information.
Absolutely. I think that really is a gift, and it's not my gift. Like I'm definitely a maximalist in my art. Like if you watch my music videos or if you hear my music, there is a lot happening, but I think that's why I respect so much somebody that can make something like with less, that sometimes says a lot more. But I'm curious, you grew up in Sacramento, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just curious, how did your upbringing there kind of shape your creativity?
Yeah, I think I just feel really fortunate. My childhood was I just have really fond memories. And I grew up in a place outside of Sacramento called Fair Oaks that was still being developed during the 80s, the early 80s. So like, when we moved into our neighborhood, there was only a couple houses, and it was on an old like farm with like a horse ranch type place. So there were still horses, and there was all these old like 100-year-old decaying barns and a creek and just acres and acres of land that was really not being used. And over the next 15 years, it became developed into houses. But my whole childhood, I got to just explore, and we lived by the river, the American River, and so just like exploring all that stuff, kind of like the bucolic backdrop of my childhood, I think really informed the types of imagery that I'm trying to conjure up with the art and the music.
Oh, amazing. Were there any experiences that you had when you were younger that made you realize you wanted to be an artist?
No, I mean, I think drawing just was always like an obsession of mine, and it was just always something I did. And it just kind of came naturally. It wasn't like a moment of like inspiration until I went away to college and I got a computer, and I realized I got Photoshop, and I realized like, how powerful leveraging technology towards a creative end could be, and I still wasn't making music, or I was just getting into electronic music though, as a listener. And I think I first heard LTJ Bookham's Logical Progression, a song by Photech called Rings Around Saturn. I think that's when it clicked for me. I was like, whatever this is, I just want to know how it was made. I don't think I can make this, but I want to know where these sounds came from. And that kind of was the beginning of the journey of trying to figure that out, and then stumbling on the fact that I guess I wanted to be a musician for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh. Surprise in your 20s. I have an idea.
Exactly. My parents loved that. They really loved that idea. They were really into that, quitting college to become a musician after never having talked about or music in my whole life.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild. That's crazy. And yet you succeeded in a huge way at it. Like that's a really cool story. And it's funny because I relate a lot to that. I went to college to be a therapist and even got a degree in it. But when I was almost done with college, not only did I decide like, oh, I'm going to want to be this violinist, and I have this idea of how to do so, but also I had never danced in my life. Never.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually really uncoordinated. And part of the idea was, and I am going to be a freaking dancing violinist. And I think anyone that knew me was like, kind of the same thing. Like, wait, you just got a therapy degree and you're going to teach yourself to dance and try to, anyway. So it's kind of funny when you get these inspirations and you get these ideas, and when they feel right, like there's a lot of courage, but also it's really important to like trust those instincts sometimes and say, I'm going to trust myself that this feels right. You know, like, was it scary to pursue that for you?
I was just messing around with it. I had a day job for I'm a very conservative person when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I did not like just jump off a cliff. When I quit college to go take a job. And so I could, but I spent my nights on music. But the thing I've always felt fortunate about for that whole situation is I think there's a beauty to feeling like an outsider, or to feeling like this is something you found on your own and it's yours. And that's what I think has kept me really, and it's probably the same with you, and the same with therapy. I'm sure there's lessons from that you have brought into your art. And same with me, my background in technology has certainly served me well as an artist. But I think I always felt like an imposter. I still feel like an imposter. But, there's something cool about that, because you're always working harder to become better, and there's always more to learn, and you're always passionate about it when you're in that state. Whereas like, if I had been like a classically trained pianist at 18, maybe I'd be like, maybe computer science is way more interesting. I'll stick with that, because like I had already done the other thing.
Yeah. And, I think most people in our industry to some extent feel like an imposter. Like, I think that's such a common feeling. Like, I know I do. I know that like my assistant and she's actually here. She's on the call as well. We call her Fish because her name is Lindsey also.
It gets very good.
So she goes by Fish, but we talk about this all the time. How like you said one time, wow, I think I'm not faking it anymore. But it was like very recently.
It was like a few months ago.
Yeah.
I'm several years into this.
Yeah. Like I think I'm not faking it. Like, so that imposter syndrome is like a real thing. And also going to what you were talking about earlier of like trying something new and like the excitement of that. I think that that mindset of being a student is a really important thing to have as a professional. Just it kind of takes away the fear of like trying to stretch yourself or trying to implement something else. The idea that something new doesn't have to be like terrifying, or it doesn't, you don't have to be 8 years old to try a new talent. I don't know.
And you don't have to be good. Like you don't,
yes,
you're giving yourself permission to not be good at the thing, as opposed to like, maybe if you're trained, you're like, wait, why doesn't anyone like this? Or why doesn't this sound good? Whereas if you're just messing around on your own time, who cares? As long as you like it, everything's fine.
Right. And, it gives like, to this day, it's interesting to have that. Like, I still like to put myself in situations where it's like, I'm going to try something new in the secret for a while. I'm going to be a student and then see where it takes me. And I'm not afraid of that because of those experiences early on of doing that. But that's really cool that I didn't know you started playing piano so late. That's crazy.
Just keyboard. I've never played. If I get a hammer weighted keyboard, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can only play synthesizers, like plastic keys,
Yeah. Well, also you were talking about how you got Photoshop, like when you first went to college. That's such a like our generation kind of a thing. Like it's hard for kids these days to comprehend that like, no, I got this brand new software at the time and I was figuring out how to use it. And it, because now kids are better at, MacBooks than I am when they're 3 years old. So like, what was it that drew you to technology?
I think just, that it was so powerful. And like, the thing about art is I always had these ideas, but I was too lazy or impatient. I don't know what the word is, but like it was like, I just need to get from point A to point B way quicker than this process is allowing for, with like pen and ink or pencil. And so like the second I could do that, and I think I always drew stuff, but I was always trying to make graphics, like really pure forms, like text or like simple shapes. And I think, once I could generate those things in a perfect space, in a digital space, that was really compelling to me. Just like, oh, wow. Like, I don't think I understood what graphic design was. I knew, I'd been affected by it my whole life and I'd seen it my whole life, but until I saw how to lay out text and do page layouts, I don't think I grasped like, oh, this is a thing. People do this for a living. And this is something that resonates with me.
Yeah. So you are both a musician and a graphic designer. And it seems like for you, both of these forms of art really kind of like intertwine and mesh together as an artist. And so in your art, do you feel like there's a place where, oh, and by the way, I should mention to our fans that you have two different names. You have your musician name, which is Tycho, and then there's ISO 50, which is your graphic designer artist name. And so is there a place where Tycho kind of ends and begins and a place where ISO 50 begins and ends, or do they just kind of, are they seamless?
I think now it's just Tycho. I mean, like, I only really do visual work in service of Tycho, you know, for the videos for the show, or you know, album covers, posters, shirts, whatever, that kind of stuff. Whereas I used to do like client work and graphics for all sorts of other stuff, and I had like a blog and all that. So like when I use that term ISO 50, it's you know, it's more kind of a reference to like the whatever that phase of my career was. It's not something that I still use to describe it. I just think of Tycho as an audio-visual project, and the graphic design is just one component of that.
Yeah. So when I'm creating music, it's very visual for me. Like a lot of times I see, and not only visual, it's not only like colors and themes. It's a lot of times like driven for me by like a story, or like I can see almost the music video. I can feel what the dancing will look like. Like when you're creating music, is it super visual for you?
You know, it's hard to say. I think I more operate off of like kind of like these emotional spaces, or like, I don't know, just like feeling like I'm in some environment. I'm not sure that there's a visual attachment. It's just more like the visceral feeling of being in a space, if that means anything. But I mean, I think I'm mostly drawing from kind of like emotional things, like nostalgia, memories, and things like that. I think that's usually what I'm drawing on, and the visual the visual stuff comes later, I think.
That's so interesting. I love all your artwork. And actually, how funny is this? I was talking to one of my managers today, and he was like, just so you know, I'm like a big fan of Tycho. And he's like, in college, I had like 2 of his artworks on my wall. This is Sammy. And he was like, so I'm a huge fan, and I'm so excited to hear you talk about like his music and art. And anyway, so we got a big fan in my management company that's listening in.
Well, tell him I said what's up. Thank you.
Shout out to Sammy.
Shout out to Sammy. What's up, Sammy?
He's going to record that and make that his, like, you know, on his answering machine or something. Answering machine. I am dating myself so much in this interview.
Also, today's Lindsey's birthday. You're dating yourself.
Is this pre-digital?
You know, happy birthday.
Yeah, I should. I feel like I am saying so many things dating myself. Answering machine. What I meant, everyone, is voicemail.
I'm gonna go get the VCR.
Yeah, let me get my VCR.
Like voicemail is pretty dated too. I don't think nobody's using voicemail.
Oh gosh, you're shaming me. Stop it.
That means that assumes that you use the phone. Like, I don't even feel like phones exist.
Yeah, I just, use Web3 for all my communication. I don't know about you guys. Gosh, I should mention, by the way, it's my birthday today. Yes. So I turned 36 today. So yeah, this is my birthday celebration. I'm a child.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm 36 years young. But okay, I wanted to ask you a question. I heard that you had a really painful injury that happened right before you wrote your first EP, The Science of Patterns, in 2002. So can you explain what the injury was and like how that kind of related to your first EP?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't think it was like I had some moment of inspiration by getting my face smashed in, but So I passed out. I always had this issue with like getting lightheaded if I exercised. It's a weird set of circumstances, and it was like an anxiety thing. I don't know. Anyways, I was in a crowded restaurant at lunch. I just passed out and fell chin first into a tile floor, and just shattered my jaw. Like, it was just like a nightmare. I mean, I don't have any real memories of the pain. So it's like, it's not like a traumatic memory for me at all. But the cool part of getting your face smashed in is you don't have to work for 6 months. And or at least the situation I had, I was really lucky. I had a really cool boss, and he let me take paid time off, and I just spent that time. Yeah, I just spent that time making that EP, and I think, I don't know, I would like to say that there was some like deep meaning, like I realized the fragility of life or something, and maybe there was something baked in there, but it certainly was the time when I got serious and said, okay, like maybe I won't make a living out of this, but I should like put music out and I should finish these ideas or spend some time with this.
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, maybe you were planning to write one already in that time, but it's like if you hadn't had that window of time to work on that music, like who knows how long it would have taken you to find that window of time? Because like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of times life gets filled with a bunch of like tomorrow, or next week, like next year I'll try this. Like, but you took what could have been like, I mean, what probably was a very devastating experience and painful and turned it into something that like, ended up shaping the rest of your life. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it was very fortuitous. I just feel, that's like, I wish more people had that opportunity. It's like you go straight from high school and everybody expects you to go right into college and then right into a job. And like, I mean, different cultures have different setups, but at least here in America, that's kind of the expectation. And like, kids don't get that moment to like discover who they are. I mean, some do, but like, I just feel like that would be so constructive for a lot of people, especially, people who don't really thrive on structure as much and need some open-ended space to kind of figure out what they're about and what makes them tick and what they're passionate about. And so I just feel super fortunate to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, also, everybody goes through disappointments or things that seem like it could be like, people getting fired from a job or let go from something or like not getting the opportunity they wanted or injuring themselves. Like, but to take that as a moment to say, all right, this isn't what I planned. This isn't what I wanted, but like, where else could I go? Like, what else can I try from this? What seems like a detour that I didn't want, you just never know where it could take you. So, I don't know. I think that's very inspiring.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, certainly. I think I always look back on anything. Yeah. Big life events like that it's always just this interesting thing to think how different things could go in just the blink of an eye, and it's like, and then it ends up this one way and that's just your life. And here you are, 20, 25 years later. And it's like, how the hell did I get here? And like, how did all these little momentary decisions and happenstances end up in this? I'd like to think that it ended up in a similar weird parallel simulation, but you never know.
Yeah, no, a simulation. Ooh, simulation theory like hurts my brain.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm halfway joking with that.
Yeah. But no, it's so true. It's like, it's wild to look back at life and think like, what were the tiny pieces that caused me to get here? And
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I really do. Or have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, first of all, everybody listening, finish this interview, everybody. Stay here. And then afterwards, go watch that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Don't
Google
it. Don't read about it. Go in blind.
Yeah, go in blind and just watch it. It's kind of what you were talking about, like this idea that like we could have lived a million different realities, but like we get to choose every day to be grateful for the one that we're currently living and the one that like life has chosen or that we chose, like whatever way it goes. Like every day we get to choose to be grateful for that reality. And anyways, what you were saying reminded me of that movie. So you should definitely go watch it.
Yeah, this looks cool. I'll check it out. Thanks for the recommendation.
So what were your early performances like when you first started Tycho, like before you had a full band?
Oh, man. Oh, really lame. Horrible. It was me with like a baseball hat on. I'd wear a baseball hat because I was so like embarrassed. I couldn't look at people. So like I put the baseball hat down and like look down at like a keyboard and just like do nothing. It was just like ridiculous. And like I think 2001, actually, what's crazy is my first show ever was supposed to be that day when I got hurt. Because I had been messing around with music, but like I got this show. A friend of mine, Chachi Jones, who was a musician in Sacramento at the time, he put me as an opener, and so I missed that show. But but then soon after we started playing more shows, and like I had like a projector and just like a couple screens, and I just messed around with keyboards, and then slowly, then I met Zach Brown, who we kind of split keyboard or guitar and bass duties. He's the guitarist bassist for Tycho, and we played a few shows together over the years, like from 2006 to 2010, just like very sparse, like maybe a handful of shows. And then with Dive, I made Dive, and in 2011 I needed to go on tour with it, and I'm like, this is a very organic record. I can't just go play keyboard over the top of all these guitars and stuff. So Zach came on board, and we got a drummer, and we kind of started touring off of that, and it's kind of always been that setup since.
Isn't that funny when, well, first of all, I love looking back at artists like beginning shows. I think there's something so charming about like those visuals of like, yeah, you with your baseball hat and like, you know, probably like not the best projector, but trying to portray an image of like, this is where I see myself going. Like there's something so magical about those early performances where you can't afford what you see, but you're still trying to convey kind of the idea. Like, I don't know. I think there's a really charming thing to that. And
look at your early performances.
Wait, what?
Look at your early
Oh my gosh, my early performances were I'll call them charming. That's the nicest way I can say it.
Charming or terrifying, either one.
A combo of both, you know. But yeah, before you have a band, you can't afford a band. And like I remember my very first tour, I put a TV, like I went to Walmart and I bought like the biggest TV they had. A flat screen TV, and I had edited together these little videos that like you would want on an LED wall, like those kind of videos, and I had them playing on a TV on these little stages like behind me.
I need to see.
I'd stand in front of the TV.
Wow. That's cool. You got an LED wall, early LED wall.
Exactly. It was the beginning days, but again, it was like, well, and I think your music is very similar where it's like you said, it's so soundscapey and it feels big and massive and immersive, and so you're like trying to figure out, how do I make my show feel big and massive and immersive so that it's an experience that fits the kind of music you're writing. So and actually, speaking of, you were talking about releasing Dive in 2011, and I read that you recorded a lot of that album using mostly analog devices and equipment. And so what was it that made you kind of switch approaches on this album?
On Dive, I just think I was getting more comfortable with the equipment, and the tools. Like past this Prologue was very digital. I just had basically like a sampler and one keyboard, and used a lot of like really kind of like early late 90s digital stuff, sort of cold and not really that like organic. And then with Dive, I started really experimenting, and the process of making Dive was very long. It was like 5 or 6 years. I just kind of tinkered with that record. Not super focused, but it was I had a day job and I was just messing around with ideas. And then I got really serious in like mid 2009 and finished it in like, it took about 11 months to truly finish it. But so it had the benefit of all this time and perspective. And I also, a friend of mine, he had been collecting analog synths. And I had been like kind of buying what I could on eBay because analog synths used to actually be affordable back then. And then because this is like 2005, 2004. But a friend of mine also gave me all of his analog synths, which was like the coolest thing ever. So he gave me like a mini Moog and some other cool synths that really like inspired me. So like I think those, and then I was learning guitar, and I think I was really getting more into acoustic guitar and stuff, and just all those kind of more organic elements came together to inform kind of a different. That's where the soundscape started to evolve. Whereas if you listen to Past This Prologue, the record before that, it's a lot simpler and kind of I don't know how to explain it, but it's definitely a simpler record, more minimal.
Cool. And so for the kind of based on the influence of the album and what went into creating it, you decided to bring a full band out on that tour. So what was it like going from being like up on that stage with a baseball hat to having a full band with you?
I mean, it was awesome because I could hide behind the band now. They were the new baseball hat. Yeah, because it's like these guys are like incredible musicians, and you're just like, Rory's shredding on drums and Zach is playing guitar and stuff, and it's like nobody cares about the guy playing keyboards. So it's great. You just get to like hang out, and so that really took a lot of pressure off me, and just allowed me to kind of just play my parts and not think I had to be like this compelling figure on stage. So that was huge. But also, I just think like it informed the music because you play those songs every night and you start to change them, and just hearing them played live by a band. We're playing songs that some of them didn't have guitars or had a synth bass line, and now it's being played by an electric, like a bass guitar. And then maybe there was a drum machine, and now Rory's playing real drums over the drum machine. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And so that definitely like informed what came next, which was Awake. That was the next record in 2014. And that was the first kind of band record where we all played parts on it, and Rory's playing all the live drums and stuff. So it definitely like that concept of the sound that ended up being Awake crystallized during those shows.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So it went kind of from you being like, I'm going to hire a band for like a tour, to kind of making a band part of your sound in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we became a band. Yeah, definitely.
You became a band, yeah.
Yeah, and through Awake and Epoch, those were truly like band records. That 4-year run was like very band centric, and yeah, but that all was an outgrowth of the touring.
Oh, that's so cool. Interesting. I also am curious, speaking of touring, there's like a million different ways to prepare for live performances. And so, some people have pre-show rituals or meditations or just any sort of practice. Is there anything that you do to get ready for a show?
I mean, I wish I could say I had some cool thing. I try to stretch usually, or like do something where I'm like moving and not just going up there cold. But I mean, usually it just ends up us being like back there. We're just all really good friends. So I think we're just back there like trying to like kind of be funny or something, just like kind of having a funny conversation and kind of lighten the mood. Because I feel like we used to all get really bent out of shape. And I think in the last like 4 years, it feels like we've all become a lot more comfortable with the experience. And it's not this like impending doom type situation where we're furiously slamming beers and stuff, It's just like, oh, maybe a glass of wine and a nice conversation and you're ready to go. It's been a much more healthy situation the last few years.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's something that I don't think, I don't know, I never really thought about it until post-COVID, when I was really struggling to understand my stage nerves. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's because I can practice my violin when I'm by myself. I can even practice choreo. I can do all that. But like, you can't practice stage fright. You cannot practice dealing with those kind of nerves until you are in front of an audience and up on a stage feeling vulnerable and naked. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, it's, so the only way to practice it is, like you said, it took you years to finally feel comfortable. And it's because you have to figure it out. Yeah. You have to figure it out in the spot on stage in front of an audience over and over again, and just like kind of look back on it and be like, well, why was that so scary? And like, how could I be a little bit less terrified? And so that's nice that you've learned how to I don't know, just lighten the mood a little bit with the people around you. And I think that's awesome. Is that kind of your way of dealing with stage nerves now, and do you feel like it's gotten a lot better?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things have changed. I think repetition obviously is the key to getting better at anything, and just we've been up there so many times. But I think like also learning more about like what I feel comfortable being up there, like the person I want to be, or I try to be myself more now instead of like somebody that I thought I was supposed to be, like, or what people expected me to be. And that's just key. Down to talking on the mic or the way that you interact with the audience, whatever. But then also just like the things you're doing, what your parts you're playing, what instruments you're using and how you're using them. Like I've just made all that a lot more comfortable. And I've also focused a lot more on kind of like the technology that makes the show work, and really tried to refine that, because I realized a lot of my anxiety before was based around thinking or knowing really that something was about to go horribly wrong. And I think not trusting, not having trust in the system that you're kind of operating within on stage, because there's a lot of technology that makes that happen. And when you don't understand every bit of it or how to fix it in a contingency scenario, that's a scary feeling. So taking kind of ownership over that and refining it to the point where I felt at least confident enough in it that I don't think it's going to explode at any minute, that I think went a long way to make me feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Like if your mind is divided between like something else than just I am here and I'm performing and I have to worry about like my projection of music to the audience. Like if my focus gets taken outside of that by anything, be it like, oh my gosh, I think my zipper is falling down in the back of my costume, you know, or like whatever it may be, or like I think the click is off, like, you know, those little things. It's amazing how suddenly the entire show's focus like will get funneled into that one area.
I feel called out on that one.
Oh, sorry. Fish literally ran on stage and was like chasing me around trying to fix my zipper until I realized it was a problem. But
yeah, it's crazy how little things like that'll spin out of control, right? Like you just start fixating and then everything else starts to fall apart because you're not focused. And yeah, that's a crazy feeling for that to happen in front of all these people who have and that's the other thing is like these people came there and that's their moment, you know, this is their like moment to interact with you and the music. And it's like, that's their night out. Like it's, you know, it's tough to get your shit together and get out of the house and like feel comfortable and go to this venue and have a few drinks, like whatever you're doing, and you're in the moment. And then all of a sudden, you know, the person on stage is just completely losing it and everything's falling apart. It's like, I always feel terrible. I'm like ruining their experience, but yeah.
I know, you know, that's something that really is the hardest thing, you know, that's why I think I feel the most disappointed in myself if I don't give a good performance is I'm like, yeah, like you said, this was somebody's night out. Like, you know, tickets aren't cheap to anything these days, you know, to parking, like all the things. And, you know, the thought that I disappointed some child's 12th birthday, like, or whatever it may be, is just like, it's a heavy burden to bear. I think as an artist, but you know, kind of like you were saying, all we can do is like try to keep all the ducks in a row the best we can. And I think my therapist said it best one time when she was like, you know, you have to realize you are just out there to give a gift. You don't have to be perfect. You're going to give a gift and that's all you can do. And I literally say that mantra so many times every night on stage when I like make a little mistake, I'm like, I'm just here to give a gift.
Yeah,
that's all.
Beautiful. And I mean, the other thing is you can't control everything, and people, I think I saw enough things go wrong on stage at other people's shows, and I slowly started to see people react differently. And I always felt like the people who were comfortable with it put you at ease. When you could tell that person up there was struggling in the moment, it made me feel awkward. It made me feel, you know, sad, like, oh, I'm sorry this is happening to them. It's just this mix of emotions for the audience as well. You know, they're in this with you. And if you're falling apart, they're falling apart. But if you just, you know, once I just accepted, I can't control this. These people are along for the ride. They're understanding. They're on your side, really. That's when it was like, just relax. Let's work through this together, and we'll get the wheels back on the road at some point, and everything will be fine. But the second you start losing it, they sense that immediately, and that's when things get ugly. I think.
Right. No, so true. And those really pro performers, those really seasoned, great performers I think they're just so good at that. You're like taking things in stride and just being like, hey, the audience, you're going to be in on the joke with me. You know, we're going to be in this together. And it makes it like, those are kind of the moments that I think a lot of audiences even remember more than anything and make the show special to them, is they're like, I was at the show and such happened and they got right back up again, you know?
Yeah, so, it's humanizing, and they realize you're just some other person. You're just
right.
Yeah. And I think it's much more relatable when they realize, you know, when there's some little tiny like disruption or imperfection in the show.
Totally. Have you had any show experiences where you kind of had to act on the fly, like something was massively wrong and you were able to like handle it well? And like, I don't know, can you think of anything off the top of your head?
I mean, you know, obviously there's been tons of times where I had to solve some problem in real time.
Of course.
But, you know, like I do remember some of the worst, like, were things that you just really can't do anything about, like complete system failure. We had this one thing where, like, you know, we were at Pukkelpop, which is a festival in Belgium. And we, like, you know, they couldn't get the system to work, something about the monitor desk. I don't know what it was, but we had an hour slot, I think. And we went on with 15 minutes left in our slot. And you know, at a festival, it just keeps moving. So like, I felt like all these people came out, they made the time, and they came over and they're standing there and they're stoked on the set. And then they get 15 minutes. And that was just like the most disappointing memory I've ever had.
But hey, you went out and I bet you gave them the best 15 minutes that you've ever given an audience.
I mean, that is a great feeling when it finally works and you get to go out there. But I mean, the big takeaway was it really inspired me. That's what really inspired me to be like, okay, this, no more amateur hour. We got to like make the system like bulletproof. And we, after that, we have full redundancy on every level. So like if something fails, there's always a backup.
Yeah. That's awesome. Sometimes it takes, because a lot of times, we joke that our show is often held together by duct tape and prayers.
Everything is.
And so it takes like a moment like that to realize, you know what, in this area, the duct tape is no longer working. Like we need to step up our game, so those moments I think you have to have them to become a better performer.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious about the cover of several of your albums. There's like a theme running through it, and you design all the covers with your graphic art. It looks like a sun, and so I was curious, what's the symbolism or the reasoning behind the sun artwork?
Yeah, that was basically for that trilogy of records. I wanted to be kind of seen as a singular work, or at least like a series of works that are related, and. Yeah, it's just that imagery has always been something that's really inspired me, and I think when I was a graphic designer, I was working at night, or doing music at night, but I never took it seriously. And then I went to Burning Man for the first time, and like I've never, I had been going to raves in the 90s, but then like for a long time, that was like 1995. And then, fast forward to 2010, and I had really just been going to like indie rock shows. That's the kind of music I was into. But Burning Man was the first time I heard electronic music recontextualized again, like into that, like the, just loud, powerful electronic music. It had been a long time since I heard it in that way. And that was like, I was actually at the Sunrise set. It was this DJ was playing, and like the sun's coming up, and it's like in the desert, you have all this kind of this crazy atmosphere and these mountains, and it's just like, it felt like you're on the moon sort of. And that was just like this really inspiring thing to me. So like the cover of Dive is photos I took out there in Black Rock Desert, and like and then so that's like a photo collage of all those. And then Awake is like trying to further simplify that and that's like a sunrise in the morning. I actually have this picture that looks exactly like Awake with those bands and the sun. That's kind of like the color scheme of a sunrise out there. And then Epoch was like the closing chapter to that trilogy, and that was supposed to be the moon actually. And so like that's kind of like the otherworldly kind of jumping off point to whatever comes next. But that to me felt like the bookends to the whole thing.
That is so cool. Well, first of all, they're beautiful. Like they're stunning to look at and so cool. And I just am thinking about when I write an album, I'm so focused on like, well, sometimes even like this song, or like this, like I get so hyper focused on the specifics. But you seem to have had such a broad view. Like what made you realize that you wanted to make a trilogy rather than just like, okay, this is my album, but like, no, this is one of three. And then also what ties these albums together as a trilogy?
I mean, it was a slow process. It's not like I didn't set out to do that. I set out to make a record in 2009 and then Dive came out of that. And then Awake felt like this really interesting, like focus. If I always thought of Dive as kind of like the whole sonic palette, and then Awake took this specific kind of like post-rock element of it and further refined it and went really far down that road. And then I felt like Epoch was this kind of stepping back and then going in a completely other direction. This kind of like space rock, more like crystalline, like I don't know how to explain it. It was a colder kind of vibe. I think those were just exploring kind of different paths that, it's like we said earlier when we're talking about like, what choices, these little choices have such a big effect on where you'll end up in several years. I always thought about that, like, Dive had there's all these places I could have gone after Dive sonically. And like, if I had chosen, but you can't do them all. You have to pick one, and it takes a long time to make a record. So it's like, you got to kind of stick it out. And, it was just a cool experiment to be able to be like, okay, now we're going to step back to square one and go in this direction and see where that leads. So for me, it was more just about exploring those spaces, but also creating this kind of narrative arc of like starting at home going through this middle ground and then ending up in this very alien kind of like unknown world, and kind of like a metaphor for life, I guess.
Yeah, the journey.
The journey.
I know that a lot of people find your music very like meditative, and it goes well with like exercise and healing. And it's funny, as I was listening to it today, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to add this to my breathwork playlist. And so I was curious, do you do that kind of like stuff as well? Are you a meditator or into breathing or any of that?
No, and I mean, I know that stuff would help me. I had really bad anxiety for a long time. And I tried meditation to help with it, and it certainly did, but I feel like I don't have the patience or something for that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are into those sorts of things, and it seems to really be beneficial in their lives. But I think I find meditation through other things, through exercise, like running. I really think it's meditative for me, and music is really meditative. So I think I find those in other ways, but I do think, as I grow older, I definitely find that I need, like I do a lot more yoga and a lot more, which I guess, that incorporates breathing practice and things like that, where you're focused on being present and kind of feeling your body. I think those things are certainly things that I've become more and more, that I've gravitated towards more and more later in my life.
Absolutely. And there's a million ways to cut an onion. And I think that meditation can take place. Don't laugh. My assistant's laughing at me. Was that an old lady statement again?
It just felt very dated.
Dang it. Okay. What should I say? There's a million ways to
I don't
skin a cat.
Sure.
Oh, that's worse. That's worse. Yeah, okay.
That's
way worse. Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
1800s or something.
Also, people are going to cancel me because I said that. They're like, she skins cats. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyways, I was just going to say that there's so many different ways that I think meditation can be experienced. Like, I think running for sure, I think is super meditative, as well as yoga. So, but yeah, I'm going to definitely be listening to your music more as I do my little routines. So you've spoken a lot about how like working in the studio is so demanding and physically draining, and, and I could definitely relate to that. Sometimes it's really draining to be like even sitting there a long time, even if I'm not like playing my violin. So are there any routines that help you balance your energy or your efforts when you're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it destroys your body. It's truly like the antithesis. It's like counter to
hunched
everything
over.
Yeah, our bodies were not designed to do this with like a 25-pound guitar hanging off your neck and hunched over a mouse and a keyboard all day. It's just, it's really sad because like I hate that. Like I ran all through high school and college, and like I always thought of myself as an athletic person. That was like core to my I wanted to be like in the Olympics or something. That was my original dream as a kid. And so yeah, I was always into long distance running, and like just to see my body. I mean, obviously your body's going to break down anyways, but to see what this does to me, like to how I feel in my body, it's just like the tragedy of my adult life. So I'm always trying to fight against that, and I don't always do a great job, but I think a lot of core, it's just a lot of stretching and a lot of core and like rehab type exercise. I feel like that's the kind of stuff that helps me these days. And just, healthy practices with the way that you work, which is hard when you have an obsession, when you're obsessed with what you do, like I am. It's hard to like stop yourself from having unhealthy practices, but I guess it's just the life pursuit is trying to find that balance.
Right. The life we lead as an artist.
No,
I hear you.
I'm not saying
no, I'm sorry. I wasn't saying that.
I mean, no, I know. I'm joking. Like, I just went off on this whole thing. It's like everybody sits at desks, idiot. I'm sitting here like crying about my life spent pushing a mouse and a keyboard. Meanwhile, that's pretty much what everybody does. So, yeah.
Well, there is something about
it's the modern reality.
It is. And there is something about those like really long studio hours that are just like expected of artists sometimes and producers, where it's like, you work late into the night and I feel like it's like you were saying, it's so important to have something to like reverse these movements of, I don't know, like you said, the yoga or the stretching and all of that for sure.
Yeah. Lots of front opening moves, like pulling your arms back, shoulder work, like building. I found that back, like anything to strengthen my back pulls me back out of that hunched over posture. And that's been like the biggest breakthrough of the last few years of learning that it's all about because, you know, I'm so used to like doing like planks and stuff like that where you're building the front and that actually pulls you forward. So you need to do like, you need to build your back because you don't want strong abs, you know, you don't want your abs to be too strong when people talk about core. Anyways, getting a little deep into that part of it, but that's what's helped me a ton, is anything that helps pull my body into straight posture, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so important to be aware of that, because I definitely have noticed in the last few years, like the violin does pull you forward for sure. And so, yeah, trying to figure out like, how do I reverse this? How do I, you know, fix my tennis elbow that I've gotten from like playing the violin? Like all these things that I'm like, when did this happen? I don't know, but it did. So I believe, not your last album, but you released an album in 2019 where you had singers on it for the first time, or you had a vocalist. What was the inspiration behind deciding that you wanted to, I think for the first time, bring in singers? And like, how did that change your songwriting process? And yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, that was Hannah on Saint Sinners, which she goes by. But she, I mean, so I tried to make a record with a vocalist in like 2004. And it kind of didn't work out because I didn't know what I was doing. But you hear snippets of her voice throughout like all the records after that. But just I used them and kind of like chopped up her as instruments. But, you know, once the trilogy was done and I put out Epoch, we toured that a bunch. And it's kind of like, I just sat down and I really wasn't inspired to do yet another long form instrumental record, which, you know, I love doing that. And I'm inspired to do it now again, but I always wanted to make a vocal record and experiment and see where that could lead. And that felt like the right opportunity. And then I met Hannah and it really all just came together really quick. And it was sort of just really serendipitous. And yeah, that became Weather. And I made a companion record to it of instrumentals, like not just the vocals muted, like literally full blown instrumental interpretations of the song. So it's like, you know, very, very different. It's called simulcast. And it's basically taking those songs and starting over again, and as if you're starting to make an instrumental song instead of with the intention of making a vocal song. So it was a cool exercise in like understanding the place that synth leads have in my music and the place that vocals, the role that vocals can play. I feel like I just learned a ton, and I've come back to my, you know, to the center, which is instrumental music, with a kind of a refreshed perspective. And I think it was like hugely constructive for me.
That's so interesting. And I found that, you know, sometimes as an artist, you do get kind of just, I don't know if it's burnt out or you just don't feel inspired. You're like, for some reason right now, the way I'm doing it, even though it's the way I've done it before, it's not working this time. And, you know, when I've come to that place before, I think especially the first time or two that I came to that place, I remember thinking, well, I've just got to completely reinvent the wheel. But it's usually not the case. Usually it's more like you were saying, you take like a slight, you know, it's like a pivot. You take a slight, tiny different perspective to something that you've done in the past. And sometimes that slight perspective can just change everything and make it all feel suddenly like it works again. I don't know, was that kind of the experience you had?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say that the reason I made that record is because I really wanted to make a vocal record. I think just a kind of, you know, one of the many positive outcomes of it was that it refreshed my kind of love of instrumental music, or at least just made me see it for what it was. So yeah, it certainly, and you know, I just think I've always wanted to try to learn as much about this discipline of being a producer and an engineer as possible. And like never having produced or engineered a song with vocals on it kind of seems like a glaring omission in your journey as you know, to learn your craft and hone your skills. Like that's just something I'd never had the experience of doing. And I just wanted the experience, and it came together with that record.
That's awesome. And you recently, or more recently, you released a song with Benjamin Gibbard from, oh my gosh, my mind's blanking. The band. Death Cab for Cutie. Thank you. My brain. Okay. But how, stop it. How did that collaboration come about?
Yeah, I was just, you know, like a lot of people from my era, I was a huge fan of Postal Service and Death Cab. And
yeah,
I think you know, and I think our managers were friends or something. You know, like I think they connected the dots and made that come together. And we it was cool because like I don't know if you know the history of Postal Service, but it's basically him and Dean Tell, or I don't know how you pronounce that, but the producer, and they would mail each other like the audio tracks to build the songs, like, literally through the post to the mail. So like we were doing the same thing with email, obviously, because it was 20 years after, or however many years. And yeah, it was just kind of cool to like, this album and this story that had always been huge to me. That's like a legendary story of how the Postal Service, that album came together. And to just be able to like be working on a similar project with Ben was kind of, a huge honor.
That's always so cool when like those full circle moments happen and someone that like really inspired you from the past becomes a collaborator. Like that's kind of the ultimate dream right there. I feel like it's like, you made me who I am today, and now we get to make something together. Like that's so cool.
And then that's when imposter syndrome really kicks up, and it gets going.
Yeah. You're like trying to act like you have it all together. You're like, I'm cool. We're like peers, right? But inside you're like, no, we're not. We're not peers.
Yeah, totally.
What do you think makes for like the ideal collaboration? You've done a lot of collaborations, I feel like.
It's tough because like I don't feel like I've had many that didn't come to fruition. So like I don't know what doesn't make one. I feel like two people who respect each other. I think it just takes a mutual respect and some humility and some kind of deference to the other person's vision, and realizing that you're both here to kind of make a common vision and not necessarily. I think I actually I had one collaborative experience where the person clearly, and they were one of the most talented people I've ever been in the same room with, but they really knew what they wanted to do, and they had a very clear vision, and I started to just kind of feel like I was just like a technician, like engineering for them, and it was like not really my thing, like I kind of have some ideas as well. So like I know that didn't work out great. But yeah, I've been really lucky to work with some people who are just super cool, and as long as there's some mutual respect, I think it works.
Absolutely. So you've also recently started like a community on Web3, and you're allowing fans to get like an inside peek to your work. Can you elaborate? I'm like fascinated by Web3 and all the different ways it's being used, by artists and, by businesses. And so can you elaborate on this approach you're taking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back, to put it into like terms that kind of like our understandable historic content.
That we
context.
Grandmas can understand.
Yeah, exactly. Like the blog era is when I came up. Like I started a blog, and that was right when like Tycho kind of took off, and that was like a cool moment, like where there's this, like to contrast it, Instagram or whatever, they just feel like these vast spaces where obviously you have access to a larger group of people, but you don't feel connected to them in any real way, and like you don't feel like it's a real dialogue. It's kind of just like a megaphone into space, and who knows who's going to hear it. Whereas like the blog world, I created this blog, and it attracted a lot of like-minded people, artists, photographers, video, people doing cinematography, musicians, and we all ended up like kind of working together. I met a lot of them in real life, would meet them at shows, and like I just feel like I missed that with this era of like Web 2 social media. And so the kind of the idea of a fan club almost is I think at its core that's kind of what this is, but like at the same time it's this more connected community, and it just feels, I don't know, it feels like you're having a conversation with people, and it's a smaller group of people, and it feels a lot more intimate to me. But like as far as how we're leveraging the technology, it's mostly just we call it like a passport, and it's basically just something you hold in your digital wallet, and it allows you access to like our Discord, and it allows you access to the open source community, and it's just like portable, so like you could take it with you everywhere and get access, and it gets you early access to show, tickets for shows, stuff like that. It's just a really interesting kind of new way to interact with fans.
I love it. And it is so fun that you can like really curate the kind of experience nowadays that you want for not only yourself, but like your fan community. And like you said, there's something so nice about like these little areas that allow for a little bit more of an intimate community where people actually know each other in it, and they're friends, and you recognize the usernames of the people, and there's something really special about these communities that this more futuristic like Web3 and all the Discords and stuff allow for. I've actually really liked some of these new things that have come out recently. So that's really cool how you're using it. Very, very forefront. Very, I need to catch up to the Web3 world.
It's a crazy world. I don't pretend to understand it on the deep, on a very deep level, but like I'm just enjoying like the community aspect of it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, before we let you go, is there anything that you're working on that you want to let people know about? Or is there like what's coming up for you next?
Not much. I'm kind of a newish dad, so I'm just spending a lot of time at home writing and messing around with ideas. I'm working on an album right now. But yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out and enjoying life. Nothing crazy, nothing special on the horizon.
Well, that's like the best answer right there. Like, I feel like so often we all feel like in life, like when people ask you what's going on, what's new, you have to have like, there's this like pressure to be like, well, I have this groundbreaking thing that I'm about to do. Like, but the best answer, and recently my favorite answer to be able to give people is when I'm like, you know what? I'm just good. I am just happy. And like, life is great. And like, I don't know. I think that's the goal right there. It's like, you have a new, how old is your kid?
She's 18 months as of yesterday.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. And I'm glad you're getting a chance to enjoy it.
Yeah. It's just been so great to be able to be home and be here and watch her grow up. It's incredible. Wow.
So she's starting to like say words and toddle around all the time now.
It's crazy. Yeah. Sentences. She's like, it's crazy how fast all this stuff moves. Yeah. Wow. So yeah. It's hard to keep up, but it's really fun.
Oh, I love that. Is there anything that you feel like you've learned from being a dad? Like, what's the main takeaway so far in the 18 months that you've been a dad?
Oh, just that there's way more to life than work and music and what, music is beautiful and passions are beautiful. But people and relationships and family is really the most important thing. And just being able to be there and be present for all these things I just feel so fortunate, because I've spent so much of my life on the road touring, and if there's one positive outcome of COVID, it's that it forced me to take a step back and be home for a while, and that's something that'll definitely inform the way I go about things in the future.
I love that. I think that's the message. I think that's the best message we can all hear, is that reminder of like, work isn't everything. Like at the end of the day, like you said, it's all about people. It's all about just being happy. And too often we get stuck. Like, while we think we're chasing happiness, we realize we're actually chasing something completely different and we're not happy. So I think that's a beautiful, beautiful message. Thank you so much for chatting with us and hanging with us for the last, hour. Again, I love your music. Such a fan over here. Another shout out to Sammy. Yes, Sammy.
Thanks, Sammy.
My manager. You're the man. But really, good luck on your next album. And if you need any violin, I will be so offended if you call anybody else. Just letting you know.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I had a great time talking, and hope to talk again soon.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was lovely.
That was really nice. Yeah.
I love this show that we just get to like meet wonderful people and have great
chat with them,
conversations. Yeah. And I say we play another one of his songs.
Yeah.
So we're going to do, we talked a lot about Dive in the interview, so I think I want to play this song. It's called A Walk, and it's from the Dive album. All right. Fish, put down the little tiny trumpet.
Well, don't tell them why we have
put down the tiny trumpet and get over here.
We had a few seconds left.
Nope. You literally were like, right as it went live again.
There we go. That's our chime for coming back.
Yeah, we should have that every week as like our little starting music. Yeah. You could make a little jingle. Do you think you could learn a jingle on that thing?
Could try, yeah. We will have to revisit this later.
I think you're going to take just a little bit of practice, but I have faith in you. As we said before, like starting new things, trying new exercises. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thanks for everybody who also is listening in the Discord. And it's always fun because we can see the comments in the Discord. Someone yelled, pickles. That's not the trumpet. That's the tiny violin, which I cannot find.
Yeah, what happened to it?
Do you think it's in that road case that went up to
It's
Utah?
gotta be.
Can you ask Alex?
I'll send some messages.
Yeah, I cannot find pickles, and I know in the Discord everyone's gonna be really upset about that. So, anyways, we'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
But also I see a lot of people saying happy birthday. Thank you guys for the happy birthday wishes. It's been a lovely birthday. I'm excited that well, I actually spent my birthday with my sister a few weeks ago, so I haven't really been celebrating today, but I keep getting reminded that it is my birthday. I'm like, oh yeah. I got sent an amazing cake from, if someone listening sent me that cake, please let me know. Everybody's like, it was me. It's like a Milk Bar cake. That's an expensive cake.
That is a really good cake.
I am so excited to eat it, but I'm like, who is this kind soul that it just arrived with no note that I could find? Anyway, so I'm gonna probably eat that tonight. Some Milk Bar cake, and
send me home with a slice.
Oh, yeah, I will. I will, because I am not going to eat that whole thing. But anyways, love you all. Thanks for joining us. Love our weekly show. I love getting to chat with our guests and to kind of connect with you guys on a weekly basis. But we'll see you next week. It's at a different time. I think we're doing it on Friday. Fish, put the trumpet down. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Next week we'll be at a slightly different day. I think it's going to be Friday. We'll time pending. So join us next week and we will see you soon. Bye.